Hey everyone, how are you? I hope you're having a fantastic day. If you are new here, my name is Blackshaw, and on this channel we look into everything true crime, the paranormal, and every now and again we sprinkle in a little bit of spirituality because we're trying to get them karma coins. If that sounds like something you are interested in, then hit the subscribe button and stick around. Today's video we are going to be delving into a true crime case, and this is a strange one. We're going to be talking about cannibalism. We might get a little bit more graphic than perhaps what you may like. So, trigger warnings if this is not something that you're into. The case that I'm talking about is known as the Rotenburg Cannibal, or the German Cannibal, or the Cannibal Cafe Killer. There's a whole host of names. We're talking about Armin Meiwes. And this case is a really strange one because for me, when I hear the word cannibal, it conjures up an image of, some crazy guy that lives in the woods who's probably a product of generations and generations of, this is my mum and dad, they're also brother and sister, and throwing arms and legs of people that he's kidnapped onto a fire pit somewhere and just yamming down on human flesh. But this guy could not be further from that image. The question that I want you guys to think about while you listen to the facts of this case is it a crime? No, not is it a crime, because yes, it is a crime, but should something be a crime if the victim is a consensual, willing, cooperative party? So strap yourself in. Like I said, we're going to be talking about some pretty gruesome stuff. And let me know what you guys think in the comments, because this one is crazy. So Armin Meiwes was born on the 1st of December 1961. Go December, babies. In a small town in Germany. He lived with his mother and his father, and he had two older half-brothers from a previous relationship. Now, these brothers were quite a lot older, and they all lived together in, I guess in the UK would be classed as like a manor house or something, like huge place. His older siblings were quite a lot older than he was. By the time Armin was 6 years old, his older brothers had moved out, leaving just him and his mum and dad. 2 years later though, when he's just 8 years old, his dad does the same thing, packs his bag and he's gone. And he abandons Armin and his mother. Now, his mother is described as very cold, very domineering, very controlling. She never let him have any friends. She didn't let him go out. It's also said that she used to play games where she would make him act like he was a servant. She was the lady of the manor. Not the most loving of homes to grow up in. So take away what Armin did when he was an adult. As a child, here he is. Before he's turned 9, all of the male figures in his life have gone. That could very easily cause issues, with abandonment and loneliness, especially when he's left with a mom who clearly doesn't give a shit about him, who isn't as nurturing and loving as she should be. And so what Armin used to do was he would create imaginary friends. Remember, he had nobody to play with. His mum wouldn't allow it. This was where his obsession with cannibalism really started, because he would fantasize, even as a child, that he would eat his imaginary friends. But something that's really interesting, and something that seems to be a common thread among people who consider themselves to be cannibals, is this idea that when you eat somebody else's flesh, you are kind of permanently linked to that person. And for a child who has a real issue with abandonment, it kind of starts to make sense. This idea that if I eat something and it stays with me, then it can't ever leave me again. This idea of eating someone to keep them with you, then they can never leave you. You can never feel that pain, and you can never feel abandoned. It kind of makes sense. Not that I'm, planning on being a cannibal, but you can kind of understand how a child might start to think those things. There is nothing about this guy that would make the outside world think that he was in any way into this kind of deviant behavior, or was going to want to, take a chomp out of someone one day. His neighbours, in fact, describe him as being kind and polite, somebody that they would have a beer with, that you could go to a dinner party and talk to normally. As an adult, he's working as a computer engineer. This guy's, he's a smart guy, which kind of makes this all the more scary because you really don't know people. So when Armin is 37 in 1999, his mum passes away. He's still living in that same house with his mum at this point. And I guess, they had kind of a strange relationship. You hear about people who have parents who are really cold, and logically you'd think that they would grow up and get as far away from them as possible. But actually what ends up happening is they crave that person's love even more. And what he's said to have done was, after she died, he got a mannequin and dressed it up as his mum. I mean, this is something like straight from Psycho, isn't it? He dressed it up as his mum and used one of the many, many rooms in the house as a shrine. Kept all of her bits and bobs in there, weird. In 1999, we are in the age, I remember very fondly, of when the internet was just starting to be in people's homes. And web pages, could give you seizures because they were full of flashing things. And there was literally a forum for every single thing that you could ever possibly be a fan of in the whole entire world. But people weren't as savvy on the internet as they are now. We know now how easily tracked you are, how your stuff can be shared around quickly. Back then, it really did feel like if you were just having a conversation with whoever was in that chat room and that was it. And so, being like all the rest of us in 1999, Armin starts logging on every single night and he starts typing in cannibalism. You can imagine his absolute joy when he finds the Cannibal Cafe, a forum that is specifically for people who either want to eat human flesh or want their own flesh to be eaten. Like, wow. It's not just me. Look at all these other people that like the same thing that I like. What he finds himself doing is every night after he's finished work, he's going home, he's logging on, he's spending hours and hours on this website talking about his fantasies. Now, I will point out that most of the people, this website is not, it's defunct now. It's no longer a live website. So, if that's your thing. But the vast majority of people on there are on there to just fantasize about cannibalism. In March of 2001, Armin takes the plunge. He's talked about his fantasy of killing someone and eating them, and now he is ready to find somebody to do it with. And so he puts an ad in the Cannibal Cafe forum. He describes himself as wanting to find a young, well-built man who wants to be murdered and consumed. The one thing about Armin is he's not out there like, he doesn't want to kill some random on the street. He's not looking to hurt anybody who doesn't want to be hurt. He wants this to be consensual. He wants to find somebody who is into this as much as he is. I feel like I'm reaching, trying to find good things. And shockingly, he starts to get replies. The vast majority of them, though, straight away, he can kind of filter out because they're people who just kind of want to role play. And he's not into that. He wants to do the real thing. He's not up for pretending. There was a couple of people that replied who seemed like they genuinely were into this. So he met one guy and the guy came to his house. I was like, yeah, I want you to kill me. I want you to eat me. Like, I'm into this. This is going to be great. Turns up at Armin's house. They are chatting. The night goes on. Armin's like, we're going to get this going. And the guy's like, oh, I've got a headache. Like, my throat is a bit sore. I think, we should probably take a rain check. Like, kill me another time. How dumb do you have to be to go to a guy's house who is a self-proclaimed cannibal and then try and back out? Like, this guy, luckily for this guy though, Armin, like I said before, was not interested in killing people who didn't want to be killed. He wanted someone who was a very, very willing participant. And so he said, look, if you're not into this, bye. And so off this guy goes. Luckily for him. There's another guy that he's said to have spoken with, and this guy was very, very graphic in that he wanted Armin to tie him to a table. He wanted him to basically smash his face in with rocks and stuff. Armin was like, you know, I'm not really into that. That's not really my thing. That's kind of weird. Just a side note. If somebody who's put an advert on the internet saying that they want to kill and eat somebody is calling you weird, you might want to reevaluate your life choices. So that one doesn't go anywhere either because, you know, he's not into the whole mega violence thing. And then he gets a message from a 42-year-old engineer from Berlin named Bernd Brandes. They start talking and both guys are really into it. Armin wants to eat someone. Brandes wants to die by having someone eat him. They start exchanging emails. They're talking about it. They're like, this is a great fit. And so they arrange that they're going to meet. Brandes starts selling off all his belongings, getting his affairs in order because ultimately he knows when he's going to die. And on March 9th, 2001, Brandes starts to make his way to meet Armin. Armin meets him at the train station and they head back to his house. Now for both of these men, their cannibalism is sexually motivated. You can imagine when they get back to Armin's house, you know, they're all excited about what's going to happen and, you know, they need a bit of stress relief. They need a way to clear the tension. And so they go and they do the nasty. And, you know, they talk and they get to know each other. And then it comes down to the part of the evening where they are going to indulge in some consensual cannibalism. Just like the first guy that Armin had met, at this point, Brandes is like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, what if it's too painful? Like, shall I go? And he very nearly backs out. But what they decide to do instead is Armin suggests, look, why don't you take some sleeping pills? I've got a bottle of schnapps in the cupboard and then, you know, we'll see how it is. Remember, he didn't want to do anything to anybody who didn't want it doing. So as disappointed as he would have been, he would have happily let him go. And so that's what Brandes decides to do. He pops the pills, knocks back half a bottle of schnapps and, you know, starts to mellow out as you would. At this point, Armin leads Brandes into a specially modified room where he sets up a camera so that he can record what turned out to be a 4-hour-long process. Something that I haven't mentioned is that Brandes himself had one request, and although he wanted to be eaten and consumed by somebody else, he also wanted to, you know, try it out first himself. He was very specific in what exactly he wanted Armin to do to him. His request was that while he was still alive, he wanted Armin to basically bite off his penis and for them both to eat it. I mean, it's not my choice of a last meal, but okay. Armin literally tries to bite off Brandes' penis. Like, Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't even know. It's too tough and he just can't bite the thing off, okay? That thing is clinging on for dear life. It's not going anywhere. So he's like, look, I can't bite it off. I'm going to have to cut it. So they cut it. So he goes, he gets the knife. Gone. Brandes at this point screams, probably going to sting a bit. But after that initial shock has worn off, Brandes is actually pretty disappointed because he wanted it to hurt more. So the penis is off. They're both going to try and eat it. They try and eat it raw, but it's too gristly. You know, it's like chewing rubber. It's no good. It's no good. So Armin's like, I know. Let me go in the kitchen. Let me whip us up a little something, you know. Starts frying it up. Bit of salt, bit of pepper. Adds in a bit of garlic. But it's still no good. Brandes apparently said that it's no good. Can you imagine being disappointed that your penis doesn't taste of anything? Should have stuck some barbecue sauce or something on it. And Armin ends up burning it anyway, like running backwards and forwards from the kitchen to the other room. And so they end up feeding it to Armin's dog. Waste not, want not. So the plan is now that Brandes would literally just bleed out. He goes and gets into a bathtub, and Armin's thinking, well, this is probably going to take a while, so I'm going to go and sit and read a book or something. So he goes and reads a Star Trek book. Every now and again he goes back into the bathroom, checks on Brand, are you alive, are you dead, what's happening, and then goes back and reads his book again. For 3 hours this went on, like it's taking forever. Who knew it would take that long to bleed out from a penis wound? Helps Brandes out of the bathtub and into another room where he can lay down. By the time he gets in there, he's unconscious. He's still alive, but he's unconscious. Now, remember, Armin has videoed this entire thing, and he can be seen on the video saying prayers and I guess generally having quite a hard time because he didn't want to be violent and to have to physically kill somebody. I think his hope was that they would, cause quite a severe trauma to the body and the blood would come out and it'd be over with. But this was just taking too long, and so he ends up taking a knife and slitting Brandes' throat. Now, for someone who, when you say cannibal, you think of such a monster, for someone to have a hard time with cutting somebody is very unusual. After he slit his throat, it's game over. Brandes dies. At that point, Armin takes Brandes' body and hangs him upside down on a meat hook. When he's on the meat hook, he then starts chopping the body up into, I'm guessing, more manageable sizes. He then wraps up the flesh and puts it into a freezer, because where else are you going to store all of this human meat? And for the next 10 months, he eats it. For want of a better phrase, he eats the human flesh of Brandes. Armin describes it as tasting like pork, only harsher. So that's fun next time you're eating a pork chop. He serves it up with some potatoes and some Brussels. He gets himself a glass of red wine. He lights candles on the table, and then he consumes the body. And when he consumes the flesh, he has described how it made him feel closer to Brandes, how he could feel him inside of him. He describes how Brandes was a much better English speaker than he was. After he'd eaten the flesh, he became a much better speaker in English. Like his accent became much clearer. He describes how by eating it, it made him feel calmer and more stable. And during that 10-month period, he ate around 20 kilos of flesh, which is the equivalent of about 44 pounds. After the killing of Brandes, Armin was back online, bragging about what he'd done, bragging to all these people. He was basically a god in this forum because they were like, oh my god, you did it, that's so amazing. Because, they're all into that. And he decides that he wants to do it again. He got such a rush out of it the first time. Brandes was so cooperative, and they just had such a special bond that it was so incredible that he wants to replicate it. And so he puts another ad online, and he's really struggling this time to find somebody who he clicks with in the same way that he did before. And when he starts describing in detail exactly what had gone on in the first encounter, an Austrian student sees all of this and thinks, I don't know if this guy's just role-playing now, this might be real. And so he alerts the authorities. On the 10th of December 2002, the police swarm Armin's house. They search the entire premises, the house, the gardens, and they find everything. Initially, Armin claims that the meat in the freezer is wild boar, but it's quite clear to everybody that this is not animal meat. The police also found the skull of Brandes and some of his bones in the back garden, as well as some of his organs. And very quickly, Armin says, yes, I've killed someone. On the 2nd of December, 2003, Armin appears in court. You would think that there would be a specific crime for cannibalism, but actually there isn't. In a lot of countries around the world where you'd think, in the UK, the US, Europe, like not many places have specific laws that involve cannibalism, and this was the case in Germany. So the prosecution tried to convict Armin on the charge of murder for sexual pleasure and for disturbing the peace of the dead, so essentially messing with the body afterwards. His defense, and this is where we go back to the question I asked at the beginning of this video: should it be considered a crime if the victim is a willing participant? And that was the defense that Armin and his team tried to use. You know, they had video footage quite clearly showing Brandes agreeing to have this done, asking to have it done. You know, they have the forum messages backwards and forwards, the emails where he's agreeing to do it. And this is along the same lines as euthanasia, isn't it? If somebody wants to die and they're asking, should it be a crime? But the jury weren't interested. It's not really a defense, is it? It's not really a valid legal defense. And he was initially convicted of manslaughter and he was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. However, in 2006, there was a retrial. People weren't happy that there was a cannibal that was going to be out on the streets potentially in 8 years. They go back to court, and this time he is convicted of murder and he is given a life sentence. So what do you guys think? Should he have been convicted and given a sentence that is comparable to if he'd have gone out to, you know, in a street or whatever and just kidnapped someone and taken them home, murdered them, and then ate their body? Is there a difference? Because the fact that Brandes wanted this as well, should Armin have been, you know, convicted and punished in the way that he was? Interesting fact, he's still in prison. He's still in prison now. He is allowed to have day visits out of the prison where he is escorted by 2 officers. He's given a cap and sunglasses as disguise. And probably the most unexpected twist in this case, he's now vegetarian. So, yes, very graphic, it's just a very unusual, odd case. If you have enjoyed this video and you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts on this case down below. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.